Hello everyone. Today I'm going to show you how to make these Shamballa style flower rings. This is what they look like. See the inside? They're really simple and quick and easy really. There's not much to it, but I'm just going to show you this today, so enjoy. To make these rings, I've chosen to use some black wax cotton cord. You can use anything that you prefer, this is just what I like to work with. The first one doesn't have to be very big, considering it is a ring. This is probably about 20-30 centimeters. It's way too much really, but you just need so you can also work with it comfortably. And the other one just needs to be a bit longer than that really. Or you can use leftover cord, that's really good as well because you don't really need much. So what I do is, I take the short one, because that'll basically be the base of the band, which is why it doesn't need to be very long obviously. You take that, put it, you can either use tape or clips to fasten it down if you find that easy to work with, whatever you normally do, but you don't really need to with this because they are so easy to make. The long cord you've got then, you then take and put behind the short one so they form a cross, like this, with the long one behind the short one. What you want to start doing then is making square knots, like you would do it on a Shamballa bracelet or other things. If you're not sure how to do that, what you do is you take, it doesn't matter what side you do first, it's completely what you find comfortable. But I start with the left side, put it over the middle cord so it forms a loop like this. And then what you do is you take the right cord, you put it over the cord that you just put over the middle one, and before you go over the middle cord, you put it underneath the other one, and then underneath the middle one as well, and then drag it through the loop. And then you tighten it. Now I like to make them quite tight. I just think that gives a nice look and makes it last better as well when they're not too loose. This is, well, not completely the first one, the first half of one really. So you need to repeat this, but the opposite way. So you then do the same thing, but with the opposite cord. Make a loop over the middle, take the other one, go over that, and then under the middle cord, and pull it through the loop. And then you do the same thing, you tighten that. Make sure that you don't get the middle cord sticking up or something, so you hold that kind of a little bit tight while you tighten the actual knot. And you tighten that up close to the other one, and then you've got your first square knot. And you keep doing this until you have the first side of your ring band ready. So you simply just keep going with that. Tighten it nicely. Repeat. Pull through. And then you tighten it again. Now how I normally like to work is I like to hold on the knots as I go, because that way you've got control over the whole string. And tighten it. And you keep going. Now I've finished my 6 square knots, and remember that it's technically 12 knots, but because it takes 2 regular knots to make up 1 square knot, it's 6 square knots. So now you want to get your beads out. I've got these. I've got 6 smaller Shamballa beads in red, and I've got one bigger. The small ones are 8mm and the big one is 10. Now you got some choices obviously. You don't have to use Shamballa beads, it can be any beads that you like. And you can also choose to all have them the same size if you like, but I just like the middle one to stand out more, which is why I've chosen that to be a bit bigger. So I'll show you how to put them on now. To do that, what you need to do is get your middle string, the shortest one that you got, get the end of it. We also want to start adding one red one of the small ones on that. Then you add your middle of the flower, which in this case is the white one, and then you add another red one. So that's how that looks. Now you want to add the last ones, so you take one side, get the end of it, add two of them on there, on one side, and then you get the other side and add the last two. And now you can see that that is what it's going to look like roughly. So now you want to continue with your square knotting so you can get the other side of the ring band, and you can ultimately put the flower together. What you want to do now is obviously continue with your square knotting so you can make the other half of the band, the other side of it. So you just continue like you did before, make your knots, then you tighten this so it basically forms the flower shape, like that. Now it's not going to be completely tight yet because you need to make another knot for that to basically complete the first square knot. Now you're doing this, do the opposite of what you just did to make it, and then when you tighten this you want to make sure these are placed correctly, because once you tighten it you can't really adjust it again, you have to undo it and then redo the knot. So you want them to be tight so they kind of stay in shape, but you don't want them to be too tight either, because then they'll get out of shape. So you want to get just the right point. So that is just basically playing around with it. There. That's my first square knot on the other side. And now I'm going to continue making another 5 so it gets to 6 like it was on the other side, so that's even, and then I'll show you where to go from there. I've now finished the other side as well, so you almost have your complete ring. But when you got to this point, what you'll find, or at least I find this, is the actual flower seems kind of wobbly and won't really stay in place. Now I'm not too crazy about this. You can leave it like this if you want to, because when it goes in your ring it will stay where it is anyway, but I like it to be in shape all the time so I know it's got the shape that I want it to have. So what I do then is I get some glue. I use E6000, which I find to be the best glue for this. And then get a toothpick or something like that, and then you want to you just need to do the outer 4 ones. You don't need to do the top one and the bottom one. I prefer not to, because I actually like them to just be a little loose, because then they can move and adapt to your finger. So as I said, I'm putting the glue onto the red bead. It doesn't matter if it touches the white a bit. I'm putting it onto the red bead. Make sure it's enough, but make sure it's not too much. And then what I do is I just turn it in, which obviously you want to do before it starts drying. And you repeat that with the other ones. And you do have time with this glue before it dries completely. You do have a fair bit of time, so don't stress too much about it. Just put enough glue there so it'll last. I kind of like to do all of them and then turn them in at the end, because if you keep moving it around, they're just going to move anyway. There you go, that should be enough. And I get it. I turn them in so where I put the glue faces towards the white bead. Press it down so it'll keep its shape. And then you want to leave it to dry before moving on with the next step, which is making the lock or the adjustable part. So I'll see you when we get back to that. So my flower is now dried for a few hours, and as you can see, it doesn't move anymore. You just have these two pieces on both sides that are a bit loose, which I prefer because it gives it a bit of movement when it's on the finger. Now what you want to do is get these two off, finish off the band basically, because you're done making both sides of the band. So what I do now is I get my glue again, I get the E6000 glue again, I get another toothpick, use that to get just a little bit of glue and go over the very last knot. Don't put too much glue on, it's not necessary, because you won't, ideally you don't want to be able to see it. So I do it on both sides. Make sure you catch the threads so when you cut them off they won't come out. That's the idea, so it will last. And I also just go around the end where the thread is coming out. On both sides. And now you want to leave that to dry for a bit again, so that you be able to go in and cut these two off right close, so you pretty much won't be able to see anything sticking out. And I'll get back to you when that's dry. Right, so now the glue at this end is dried and we're ready to cut these pieces off. Just get a scissor and you just want to cut them as close as you can to where you've glued them, so you don't really notice that they've been cut off. Like that, and that'll hold fine now because of the glue. Now the last part you want to do is move on to the adjustable part of it. For that you really don't need much length of a cord. Often you'll just be able to use one of the scrap ones you just cut off, If not, just cut a little bit extra off, but you don't need much. What you do is you get your piece, get the 2 strands, fold them over so they go against each other, like this, go in opposite directions. And then you want to just do some more square knots, but this time instead of just doing them around one strand, you're doing it around both, because that's what's going to make up the adjustable part. So you find the middle of the cord that you just cut off, and then you just start making your square knots again. If you find this difficult, you can get some kind of clip or something to hold these 2 strands together, at least until you've done a couple of knots, and then it'll be fine. But it's pretty simple, so when you get the hang of it, you'll be able to do it. The most difficult one is the first one. So you make your knot, tighten it, nice and tight. And then you want to keep making as many knots as you want the adjustable part to be long. In my case, I choose to make the adjustable part 4 knots long. I find that that fits pretty perfectly with the size of the rest of the ring. And it is adjustable, so you can always, if you need it bigger, you just make it a little bit bigger. So you want to keep making your 4 square knots, or however many you choose to make, and then we'll just come back and finish off the ring. And there you go. That's the 4 square knots that make up the adjustable part. Now you can pull it, open it. The first couple of times you pull it, open it and close it, it will always be a little bit tight, but that will loosen up and settle very soon. So don't worry too much about, oh, I made them too tight. It will work. So, of course, then you want to glue the last knot you did, cut these 2 off. But before we do that, I prefer to just finish off the ends, because I like to glue the ends as well, the knots on the ends. So instead of making that in 2 steps, I want to save some time, some drying time, and you might as well do that first and put glue on and let the whole thing dry. So you want to figure out how long you want the ends to be. That's going to be these ends. That's going to be hanging on the palm of your hand, which makes up the adjustable part. They don't need to be that long, because obviously it's a ring, it doesn't need to be able to adjust that much. I like to make them about between 1 and 2 centimeters. I always just measure it by eye. It's not really necessary to be too specific. Just whatever you think. So on both sides you want to do the same thing. You start off just making a completely normal knot. And then what you want to do is you want to get some beads. In this case I've got some little silver metal spacer beads. They're about 4 millimeters. You don't want them to be very big, obviously, because you don't want them to annoy you on the other side of your hand. And you can choose whatever ones you want. I just find that these go well with everything, so I like using these. And then the strand that you just made a knot on, you want to put on one of the beads. Pull it all the way down to the knot, and then make another knot on the other side, and get as close to the bead as you can. Tighten it as well as you can. Do the same thing on the other side. And before you tie the very first knot, I like to just compare so they get equal length, because you want to make sure that you get as equal length as you can. That looks best, I find. There, and put on the other bead. You want to pull it down and then again tie another knot on the other side of that bead so it won't come off, and as tight as you can and close to the bead as possible. There you go. So the ring is now dried, and you can cut off the last pieces. Again, get as close as you can to where you glued it so you don't really notice that it's been cut. Do the other side. And then cut off as close to the knot as you can. And the other side. There, and that's your ring. Fully adjustable. I'll put it on for you so you can see what it looks like. That's what it looks like on. And then you have these two, and you might think that they're a little bit annoying, but actually I don't find them to be annoying at all. You just get used to it really, and because they're quite short they don't get in the way or anything. So that's the Shamballa style flower ring.